Okay, wow. We had a plethora of great games to enjoy in the Champions League this week, but in this last 16 there were two games in particular that were unmissable, would you not say, Nicky?
Yeah, brilliant week of Champions League football. Obviously dominated by the two headliners. I think, to be explicit, no one's going to miss it, but the Madrid derby last night as we're recording, and then the second leg between Liverpool and PSG the night before. Sort of fun that actually we're saying this, two of the best games of Champions League football, definitely this season, but games without many goals in them, which sometimes...
turns out they are overrated.
Yeah, it turns out. I mean, actually, the Madrid derby in particular, we got Conor Gallagher scoring in the first minute, then we had 119 minutes without a goal after that, but it was compelling stuff nevertheless.
That's what a chess match is like sometimes. You know, you take the queen early on, but then you've got to defend yours now for the next hour or two.
I suppose that's it. And I guess with Atletico, it's slightly different. I think there is a difference between the two games, because PSG Liverpool, which we'll come to in a bit, I think felt like the highest form of football, whereas this was great football with the highest form of tension between the two Madrid teams. And there was never going to be anything really to choose between these two teams, just because, you know, you look at they've drawn twice in La Liga this season. It's often tight when they play each other. As the years gone by, Real Madrid have become more like Atletico rather than the other way round, which we might have expected at the midpoint of the Simeone era. So, I mean, I guess at the end of that, you just have to, first we have to absorb the games themselves before we get onto the candidacy of Real Madrid and PSG, who do seem like the favourites for the Champions League to me. I agree with you, Dotun. But how many ways can Atletico find to lose to Real Madrid in European competition?
Oh,
yeah. Well, it's
like 5 times in the last 11 years now, and it seems like, can we find a more heartbreaking way every time?
It's actually interesting because, as you were saying that, I was just thinking to myself, in some ways, PSG beating Liverpool, and I say this and it feels immediately wildly premature because they could go out next round, right? They could lose to Aston Villa and surprise us. But
what do you reckon, Marco Asensio winner?
Hey,
that would be the most PSG thing ever, right?
But what I was just thinking was, in some ways, that was the match or the tie in this round that rewrote a narrative a little bit, because PSG are the team that don't have that backbone, that do fold in these big European nights, that don't deliver. And there's been a bit of a sense of something bubbling with Luis Enrique there all season, but this was really, I think, one of those games which goes down in the, okay, something shifted here, something has moved, we've changed the story. Whereas Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid is just the same story, finding more and more ways to come up and happen, right? You know that some way, somehow, Real Madrid are going to knock Atletico Madrid out of the Champions League, because they always beat them in the European Cup. They don't always beat them in domestic competitions. They don't even always beat them in the European Super Cup. But in the Champions League, they will always win, and they will always do it in the way that is most painful for Atletico to have happen.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Alvarez double hit thing, it was just seeing Diego Simeone, who's seen it all, in the press conference afterwards saying, who in this room saw Julian hit it twice? Put your hand up. And no one put their hand up. Now, I have to say, I've been through about 10 replays of it, and there is one angle, probably the fourth angle I saw it from, where you can see it does hit his left. But I mean, it's horrible. It's so unfortunate. Obviously, there's a suspicion that Kylian Mbappe is going, look what he did, look what he did. And the optics of that are quite bad. But I don't think we can start crying conspiracy. It is the rule, and that's how it is.
Yeah, it's a frustrating rule. It's a rule where you can find flaw with the fact that if a goalkeeper comes off his line, it's a retake, whereas this is just automatically you're done. But it is the rule, the law of the game, no less, in FIFA parlance. So
the thing is, you could argue it's not even the most heartbreaking bit, because they get their chance after that. Llorente, whose dad and uncle played for both clubs, hits the cross and came through the academy. It came through La Fabrica, hits the crossbar. But just because he tries to hit it a bit too hard, actually. He's like, I'm too confident almost. And then obviously Oblak, who saves 2 pens against Inter, despite this myth that he's like a not good penalty saver, he saves 2 penalties in the shootout against Inter at the same stage, at the same stadium last year. Really should save, and there's not many times in a shootout that you say the goalkeeper should save that, but he should have saved the Rudiger one, shouldn't he?
Isn't it funny? Because I almost sometimes come full circle on this whole a penalty shootout is not a lottery. We hear this a lot now, and it's true. There's so much data now you can show it's not a lottery. It's about preparation. It's about things you do well. And yet, exactly as you just said, a penalty that is so well struck but catches the bar. I mean, it's a really well hit penalty with intent versus Rudiger's penalty that it's not a good penalty, but the keeper, and I guess you could say, well, that's why it's not a lottery, because the keeper should save it and he doesn't. I think you can criticise Oblak even though it's a penalty for not saving it, but it does feel like sometimes it's fine margins, and somehow again those margins, when it's between Atletico and Real Madrid in the Champions League, you know which way it's going to fall.
I guess that's it. And because I think if you're Diego Simeone and Atletico and you look at it this morning, if you're Simeone and you go home last night, you think, I guess it's natural after a defeat, even if they won on the night, to say, what would I have done differently? What would they have done differently? What could they have done differently? I don't know if there's really that much in terms of scoring early, riding the momentum of the Metropolitano. They're the better team for most of it. I think if there's one moment, really, and they're going to need to rethink this because, of course, they host Barcelona in La Liga at the weekend, and especially after that defeat at Getafe last weekend, Atletico need a result this weekend. Then, of course, you go forward to the start of next month, and they've got the home tie in the second leg of the Copa del Rey semi against Barcelona again. So 2 huge games against Barcelona to come at the Metropolitano. If there's one thing that you think about, it's easy to say in retrospect that the Vinicius missed penalty didn't change the game because he missed it, but it did change the game. And I think the way it changes the game is because Atletico have quite a big wobble after that. They're completely in control up until that point, but they're pushing so hard for the second goal that they deserve that they get caught on the break with a straight ball. It's the first time that Mbappe, who really isn't in either game a lot, either of the 2 legs, because they decide to play with such width to get at Atleti, who are traditionally quite compact. It's the first time that Mbappe gets a run at the Atleti defence, and all of a sudden he takes out 2 centre-backs like that, and Lenglet's foul is just a complete panic, really. It's like he's trying to grab onto the floor because he's completely lost balance. It's like that time that Steph Curry put Chris Paul in the blender and, people sort of painted a twister board below him because he's completely at sea. That's where Lenglet is. And at that moment, all of a sudden, from being in a position of total domination, they're like, oh yeah, they can get at us. And I think that shakes the confidence. I think it shakes Simeone's confidence because the changes that he might have made, and we've talked so many times this season about Atletico having such a strong bench, the changes that he might make earlier to win the game, he actually doesn't make until later with the expectation of extra time. So in a way, it kind of enables Real Madrid to hang on for extra time, you could argue.
And when you said earlier on that Real Madrid are playing like Atletico now, what did you mean exactly? In which way has Real Madrid been more like Atleti than Atleti?
Well, they just roll with the punches. So they don't always dominate, do they? I mean, the story of Real Madrid, and we talk about it being Champions League muscle memory and all this sort of stuff. Now, of course, if you continue to get the results over time, you do believe. And that creates a momentum. It creates a feeling of we've been here before. Let's not panic. But in terms of like Atletico are no longer a perfect defensive team, even if their goals against record is very, very good in La Liga, of course. But what they are is a team, and if we go back to, say, the second leg at Anfield at this stage in 5 years ago, where they took an absolute battering from Liverpool and they managed to hang on. That ability to hang on when you're getting marmalised is what Real Madrid are all about as well, isn't it? And then you have the moments of quality from the big players to get you over the line. But you often hear people say to you, and we have people mailing in, don't we, and writing in saying, how is it that Real Madrid can play badly and get through these games? It's a similar stickability. And maybe Atletico would be able to finally get that Champions League if they didn't have to play Real Madrid on the way.
Yeah.
Arguably, Real Madrid are not so far on display the best team in the tournament. Arguably,
But they never are. Are they really?
Until the final.
But they get it. They weren't even the best team in the final last year. Dortmund were the best team for the first hour, and yet the longer it goes on that they're going to find a way.
This is the narrative that we live in, and I have absolutely embraced that narrative in the past. I'm not sure this year. I'm just not, and maybe I'll...
Is it partly because of PSG? Have PSG changed your view of what the field looks like?
I think I thought it even last night, and you've, I think, addressed this really well just now, so I don't necessarily need to rehash it because you've given the reason why they wouldn't, but there was a part of me in extra time last night that was frustrated for Atletico not going for the jugular, and you've addressed it because the reason is you get spooked by that moment when suddenly Mbappe goes, and is the reason that Real Madrid don't look so good because Atletico are playing in a very particular way and you can't risk abandoning that. But I felt like after that, exactly as you said, after that penalty miss, I thought they're here for the taking. You've got to finish this. And then you can start talking about substitutions. And actually, I don't want to fault Simeone's substitutions because Correa, after he came on, had a couple of brilliant moments and a really, really sharp turn inside the box and that one piece of control as well.
That would have been like goal of the Champions League season, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So I'm not here to knock his substitutions either, but I just felt like in extra time, I wanted, and maybe it's just because I had struggling with jet lag, wanted a bit more things to keep me perked up, but I wanted a little bit more courage in extra time, and I felt like maybe we didn't quite get it. But again, maybe if you had shown that courage, Jude Bellingham runs off and scores and you look stupid. So,
but PSG, as Andy says, have reshaped people's thinking about not just them, but who possibly could win this Champions League this time around. They've had some amazing performances, not least against Liverpool.
Well, we were having this conversation right before we came on about how these like two great ties, and then do you think the winner's coming from these two great ties? And thinking, well, my answer was two great ties, but it was kind of Atletico that made the one tie great, not Real Madrid. Yeah, of course, we should expect Real Madrid to be Real Madrid. But the other tie was great because PSG are no longer the team that we're used to them being, because they are resilient, because Dembele has, since the start of the year, touched some new level and gone to a new place, because even in, I think, an imperfect performance in some ways during the 90 or during the 120, but Donnarumma still standing up and having that huge penalty shootout and reminding us what he can be in terms of a goalkeeper that wins games as well.
He saved two, didn't he? The penalty shootout, not bad.
And it's funny, in so many ways, Donnarumma is an unsuitable goalkeeper for PSG and for Luis Enrique's PSG, as we've said time and again. And this season, he's sort of doubled down on that. He looks awful with the ball at his feet, and that's not really going to fly for Luis Enrique long term. There's the fact that he's conceded a crucial winning goal twice that he should have saved, and we talked about it with the Harvey Elliott goal last week, the Correa goal, to go back to Correa, that he scored in Paris, which was pretty much the same goal as well. So you can't really have a goalkeeper, when you dominate a game as a team like that to such an extent, who kind of lets you down at that big moment. And yet, you put him in a penalty shootout, all of a sudden it's the Euros all over again. Now, I wonder if, I don't think this maybe changes his future at PSG. I think in the summer, they get rid and they buy Lucas Chevalier from Lille. I think they go on and replace him. Of course, Chevalier has been very, very good in this Champions League as well. I think he's going to go on and become France's number one goalkeeper, or at least challenge Mike Maignan for that seriously in the next couple of years. But this is not about the season as a whole. It's not about his career as a whole. It's just about, in this moment, there's not many people who you'd rather have than Donnarumma, is there?
No, exactly. And I don't know. I think he's got that frustrating thing about him where I don't completely trust him in all situations still, and I'm not sure he's evolved in every way that I want him to.
Yeah.
But his shot stopping absolutely can win games, and sometimes in this level, at this standard of football, at every standard of football, I suppose, but goals define things, and he kept out not just in the shootout, but he kept out several.
I mean, that's the problem, isn't it, really, with him and what worked for him in this second leg, actually, on the other hand. The fact that Donnarumma's role in this tie has been to prevent an injustice, almost, doesn't it? Because PSG have been the better team over the two legs, and Liverpool had their moments, particularly in that second leg at Anfield. But I think the whole point is it looked like Donnarumma wouldn't be the player to prevent that injustice because he didn't in the first leg, and he ends up being that player in the second leg when perhaps certainly the way that PSG start the first half, the second half, and both halves of extra time, it doesn't look like he'll have to be that player because it looks like PSG are this irresistible tide. But I have to say, I think if there's one player, going back to Serie A, Nicky, if you'll allow me, I think if there's one player who underlines why they're a really serious contender, and I think we have to bear in mind with both Real Madrid being Real Madrid and PSG being really good, it's still only the quarterfinals next. The way that Kvaratskhelia played over these two games,
was amazing.
But not that he was brilliant on the ball, but I think in the game at Anfield he's brilliant off the ball, and I think that's so important. This is the bit that underlines it's not just the fact that they have this collective excellence, that it's not about the stars anymore. They are so good without the ball, and they were so good without the ball against the team that's probably been the best team in Europe this season over those two legs, and particularly when Liverpool are having their moments at Anfield. That is the bit that people don't really talk about Kvaratskhelia, which makes him ideal for what they're trying to do at the moment.
I think he's extraordinary, and I'm glad you brought him in because it is not easy joining a club mid-season. And I think this PSG narrative, I've heard a lot of this narrative, and I don't mean to diminish it either because there's plenty in it of, it's this new version of PSG that they're building on what they've got domestically, and they've got all this young French, of course, all true, right? All true. But that's still a casual 70 million euro signing that's been brought in mid-season to boost them and has immediately, which actually doesn't happen that often when you sign a 70 million euro player in mid-season. They don't normally step straight into your team. And I would say even more so when they're a slightly anomalous kind of footballer. I don't have many other Kvaratskhelia in my head in terms of the way he plays. But I thought what was really impressive in this tie, and certainly in the second leg, was exactly what you're saying, Andy. Work off the ball, places he's winning tackles like all over the pitch, really was up and down on that left flank. And he gives you something really different in possession because yes, he's a dribbler. Yes, he can beat his man. Yes, he can do that for you. But I think he's got so much more to his game than that in terms of his vision, in terms of his ability to slip into different parts of the pitch and read the game and find the places to be useful and connect play. I think he's a really sophisticated player who already showed when he went to Napoli, and I'll be realistic, I didn't know who the flip he was when he showed up at Napoli. I did all my research on him after he got there, but slotted straight into that Spalletti team and found a new level and had no problem doing it. And again, he's showed up in the middle of a season without any preparation, stepped into one of the biggest Champions League games you can imagine against a team who finished top of the Champions League group, who are top of the Premier League by a mile. And does he look like an alien object in that team? No, he looks like he's been there the whole time. And that's a testament to both him and Luis Enrique, I think.